Leliana, Sister Nightingale, the left hand of the divine. Of course, Leliana's had a long history in the Dragon Age series. We first meet her as a travel companion, as well as potential romance partner in Dragon Age Origins, and she makes a cameo appearance in the later chapter of Dragon Age 2, and she has a fairly major role in Dragon Age Inquisition. She is the spy master. Now, before I proceed to the actual character, it's difficult to talk about Leliana without mentioning the rather large retcon job that BioWare did on her. I understand that retcons happen, that is to say, they seem to occur all the time in all sorts of games. What I don't see is their inevitability. And what I mean by that is pretty simple. Let's go back, and I should, for the point of clarity, explain. The retcon I'm talking about is if you had killed Leliana during the Sacred Ashes quest in Dragon Age Origins, she's dead in that game. But she comes back in Dragon Age 2, and more importantly, she is a major player in Dragon Age Inquisition. This is explained by her admitting that she had been killed, but Andraste and or the Maker had raised her back to life. This is bad writing and bad storytelling and just bad from every angle you look at it. The problem here is it's all well and good that Leliana is still around. BioWare should have never offered the option of killing her in the Temple of Sacred Ashes if that was not going to be something that could be later played upon in future titles. For example, let's say they had actually stuck to their guns, Leliana's dead in some version of Thadian reality, or Thedosian reality, and then they say, well, this is our spy master, whoever that is, Bob. Now, of course, it wouldn't be called Bob, but the point I'm trying to make is be consistent. If you're going to offer an option to kill someone and eliminate that person should not be a recurring theme in a game, no matter how much you might want to have that person. Of course, this all might be due to time constraints, money constraints, production constraints, all of the above. Who knows? But with some forethought and planning, a retcon such as Leliana is actually dead, but she's not, this retcon doesn't need to happen. And for even more minor ones, such as the Dagna one, you convince her to stay with her father and become a smith, but regardless of what happens, she still becomes an arcanist. That's odd too, and there are many smaller ones throughout the game. If for whatever reason, the writers or David Gator or the team had thought that it's so important to keep Leliana around, they should not have offered us the opportunity to kill her in Dragon Age Origins. Now, admittedly, most people didn't, but it's still an option. If you destroy the Sacred Ashes at the temple, then she gets angry and she tries to kill you and attacks you. Okay. Still, if the option is there, why not follow through with it? Now, I'm not going to make predictions, but the most major decision at the end of Dragon Age Awakening, which I actually thought was pretty decent, was, kill the architect or don't kill the architect. Well, is that going to have any bearing on anything? I don't know. We still don't know whether having the Godchild in Dragon Age Origins has a bearing on anything, because in one instance, yeah, Flemeth takes the old god's soul, and another, there is no taking of the old god's soul because there is no old god's soul. And so I think, in all likelihood, that probably will not have any bearing. I mean, you'll simply have perhaps a Solus or some pseudo Flemeth Solus in future titles or in DLC say, either I have the soul of Mythal, or I have the soul of an old god and Mythal, and that'll just be some dialogue and some reference. That's probably what it's going to amount to. And likewise with the Architect. Even if the Architect is dead, there'll probably be some Darkspawn that had been under his influence, and they'll say, well, the Architect had taught us da-da-da, and this is how BioWare seems to operate. Leliana being around, okay. Now, apart from the dreadful retcon that was poorly implemented, I think she's an okay character. Of course, you don't have that much interaction with her, but you can harden her again, or you can soften her again, although she's initially much more in a hardened position. The assumption being that she was never hardened to begin, that she was never softened to begin with. And we've been with Leliana for a long time. There's Leliana's song. She has her own companion quest in Dragon Age Origins, and she does make that cameo under the Seekers in Dragon Age 2. And she's not a bad character. And as a member of the Inquisition, spy master, I suppose she has some semi-essential role. But it seems odd to me that, another thing that seems odd to me, rather, is that she's just initially hardened. Maybe what would have been interesting is if Leliana had never been hardened and she still has a soft approach in the beginning. The assumption, though, going into the game, no matter what happened, no matter whether you let Margin live or not, or softened or hardened her, is that she is hardened, she's hardcore, and of course you can soften her up again. I don't know why BioWare did that. Maybe because new players weren't familiar with that and they wanted to give them the opportunity. I don't really know. But Leliana is overall a decent character. I don't personally see, I didn't see the necessity in her returning, though. She was a favorite, I think mostly because people are able to romance her and travel with her. Although I suppose you do see some age progression as she becomes more mature, but not really. And as I said, your choices in Dragon Age Origins had absolutely no bearing on anything but a few dialogue references and mentions in the third installment, Dragon Age Inquisition. So, whilst Leliana was not a complete disappointment, I also don't think she was necessary to implement, and had they taken their time, they could have had another spy master that would have been present if Leliana had been dead. You know, never became the left hand of the Divine, maybe an alternative timeline story. That would have been interesting. But they didn't do that. Time constraints, production constraints, money constraints, I don't know. Probably all three of those. But I can't help but think of Leliana and think of retcons. Don't have them if you're not willing to. Don't put in scenes and opportunities in games that you will be forced to retcon later without foresight. The idea being, is this reasonable to kill Leliana? If we in future titles, will she be important? Will she be part of it? Da da da. Maybe, maybe not. They didn't think about that apparently, or at the time they didn't think far enough ahead. Who knows? But we've seen this happen in Mass Effect. We've seen BioWare is very good at retcons. Many companies are, but BioWare seems to be taking the cake in this respect. I don't really have much else to say about Leliana. For me, it was hard to think about anything other than her, A, retconning, and B, she's always hardened no matter what, even though the initial playthrough I had, she was very softened by the hero Ferelden, and so I didn't imagine her being this hardcore spy master, rather a more gentle, more understanding, forgiving spy master. But, you know, this is probably me just being too picky. You have to judge for yourself. As always, lords and ladies, thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next companion discussion. Bye-bye.